As of 2011, only 26 people have summited all 14 peaks around the world. Tonya is the 20th U.S. woman to have climbed Mount Everest and the 5th American woman to have reached the top of Everest by the treacherous North Ridge. Brad is a professional high-altitude filmmaker and mountain guide. He is one of a few people to have reached the top of Mount Everest from both the north and south sides. They will share their stories and discuss the climbing industry's increasing reliance on technology and how having two genders on the trek powerfully impacts the final results. Brad and Tonya's impressive accomplishments and their obvious leadership abilities in overcoming difficulty and fast-changing situations make them ideal speakers at Tech It Out, where we work to inspire participants to advance their careers along the technology continuum. Please join me in welcoming Brad and Tonya Clement as they share with us life beyond Everest.
Thanks, Jason. We're really excited to be sharing our story. I think the best part of going on a big expedition and doing something like that is bringing it back and sharing it. And I'm proud to be here with Brad because what technology has done for us is enabled us to bring real footage from the mountain, beautiful photography, and we even threw in a little bit of music to make it fun. That's part of the joy, too. So with that, I want to give you just a little bit of background. When we first came back from the mountain, it's been a while since we did it. We climbed Everest in 2006. And when we first came back and started doing a lot of our slideshows and presentations, whether it was at a museum or at just a community event or a local REI, it was always interesting who would come, who would turn out. I'd look out in the audience, and I would just see such a great variety of people from very young to very old. Some people look like they might climb mountains. Other people look like they've never climbed a mountain or had no desire. And it was always a little bit perplexing to me, like, why are people coming? And then I'd see tears of sadness, because there's a lot of stories in mountaineering that are sad, but tears of joy. I would see people applaud. I'd see people get sad, happy. All of the emotions were run through their faces and through their emotions. And then it just really dawned on me, I had this aha moment, that they're really not, it's not the mountain itself, it's what the mountain stands for. So to us, and I think to many of you in the room, Everest is an icon, a symbol, a metaphor, an analogy for success, for achievement, for determination, for hard work. We all know it takes something to get up it, and you just can't show up at base camp having never climbed before and expect to get to the top. So it stands for so much. So I'm going to insinuate, we're going to tell you our story today, but I hope that through the process you're really living your story, because a lot of people gravitate to the stories of the mountain for what it stands for. So I'm going to share a quote with you. And this is great. I'm just going to read it in case some people can't see it, but everyone has an Everest inside of them. It just may not be a mountain peak or a raging river or a deep ocean, but we all have our challenges. It's reaching beyond our grasp, striving to go further than we ever thought we could, that makes life worthwhile. So with that, it doesn't matter where you are in your life. If you're one of our scholarship high school or college students here today, maybe your Everest is trying to graduate. Or if you're in business, maybe your Everest is trying to get that next level position. Or outside of work, it could be overcoming an illness. You get the picture. It could be so many things. So with that, we want to take you to the mountain and to your mountain.
Yeah, thanks. And sounds like you guys can hear me. Let me know if you can't. But as Tonya was saying, everybody has an Everest. Ours just happened to be Everest. and we were fortunate enough to be invited to be part of what was called the Everest Peace Project Expedition. And this was a project founded, the brainchild of a gentleman named Lance Trumbull who lived out in California. And he wanted to prove that people of different faiths, different political backgrounds, different cultures could come together, unite on a challenge such as Everest, and climb the highest mountain together as a team, unite, overcome difficulties, and put their differences aside. It was a really unique team. You can see up here a little bit of the photos. These are our team members. There were 10 of us, and we came from all over the world. We had Sele from South Africa. We had Jamie from New Zealand. We had a Sherpa from Nepal, which he was a legitimate team member with us as opposed to a hired gun, which is so common in this part of the world on these mountaineering expeditions. We had a Hindu Gautam from India. We had Tonya, and Tonya and I did not know each other at this point. We had never met. So we had one woman. We had Israelis, 2 Israelis, and we had a Palestinian. And so many differences, great differences among this team. It for sure was going to be an interesting proposition to see if we could all come together and achieve this accomplishment, achieve this goal. So it wasn't always a rosy picture. It wasn't always super smooth, but we did have a good level of success. 8 out of our 10 team members made it to the top. Ali, the Palestinian, did not make it because of illness. He came down with pneumonia. Nor did Gautam from India make it to the top, again, due to sickness. But overall, we had a great deal of success. Again, sometimes a bumpy road to the top. And so I'm going to show you a quick video, just a few minutes, give you a little taste, a little feel for what it was like to be on the mountain with our team. And we look forward to sharing the whole story with you today.
Some people think Everest is a beautiful goddess. Personally, I've been here enough times to know it's a big, harsh, cold chunk of rock that doesn't listen to anybody. You've got to pick your time, you've got to be careful, you've got to work out all the details, and then you have a chance of coming back.
There you have the end of the story before we even begin, but you know we had success. And for me, I want to tell you a little bit about how I got invited on this, because we both came at it from a different place. Like Brad mentioned, we didn't know each other. So the way it came about for me was I was in the outdoor industry, and I was working at a trade show in Salt Lake City. And this is an actual shot of the booth. I was selling climbing clothing and climbing gear. And typically, every year at this show, I'd been to about 20 events. It was twice a year. 4 or 5 people would come up to me asking for sponsorship to go climb Mount Everest. You know, a lot of people are doing it. I wouldn't be surprised if there's not someone in this room today that has attempted it. But people would come up and, you know, ask for sponsorship. So Lance, the gentleman that Brad mentioned, he had a last-minute cancellation. There was another female selected to go on this climb, representing the United States. But in December, she became pregnant, and her doctor wouldn't allow her to go. So here it is, January. It's actually January 31st, and this expedition is going to leave at the end of March, first part of April, and he shows up at this trade show, all hairy-carry, looking for a woman to go, because they needed a female on the team. Now, to the credit of Jill's book and everything, this is a big sign, because the sponsor at the time was Panasonic, and they said, this is not a diverse team, and we're going to pull our sponsorship if you don't find another female. So it shows a little bit about how far we've come. But nonetheless, he's walking around. Where do I find someone that can climb Everest at the last minute? And several people said, go talk to Tonya. You know, she's got a big L, big loser. She'll go. She'll do anything. So this gentleman kind of saunters over to my booth and invites me. And, you know, I'm facing this big, huge question. And my coworker said I didn't really realize he was inviting me at first. I thought he was kind of asking for the money, but then when I realized he was really giving me this chance to go to the mountain, they said I turned white and I kind of stopped breathing. And I was just kind of shocked. But I didn't have much time to make up my mind. I was busy. It was the end of the show. It was the last day. And he said, okay, by the way, you have to tell me in 48 hours. So I'm facing this big decision, and this is what was going through my head.
Come on and let me know. Should I stay or should I go?
Told you there'd be a little music. We got to have fun, right? It's lunch. Got to keep you awake. So, but it's a serious question because at this time, I was, I knew I wanted to climb Everest. It was a dream of mine. I was nowhere preparing for it. It wasn't something I was going to do in the next year or two. But just like anybody, if you're a football player and you're playing seriously in the pros, you want to go to the Super Bowl. If you're a tennis player and you're serious, you ultimately want to play in Wimbledon, right? You get the picture. So Everest was always in the back of my mind. And I like to say I did an IPO on myself, an initial public offering, because when people would ask me, is there ever going to be a day, do you someday want to climb Everest? I would say yes. And I was telling people and I was seeking out people. And so I feel like when you put it out there, the universe really will rise and help you achieve it. So the reason he came to me was because probably 5 or 6 people said, definitely, Tonya would be interested. So it also helps to work in the outdoor industry when you can get the time off. But I didn't know a lot about the mountain. What I did know is probably what many of you know. How many people, show of hands, have read this book? Okay, good. There's quite a few of you. This is the Into Thin Air book about the 1996 disaster where 13 people lost their lives on the mountain. And the first thing I think of is, oh boy, I'm signing up for what could be a death sentence. I don't know if I can return alive. And if I do return alive, would I lose fingers, toes, my nose? There's the story about just all that went down so horribly that year. So that was going on in the back of my mind. I also knew, I just got to play the woman card just a little bit here, but I won't linger long. I also knew that it's not really a place for women, that women aren't really invited. This woman happens to be in the book over here, Arlene Bloom. I had to run over there and make sure she was written up because this is the pioneer in my mind in mountaineering. This is the woman that really paved the way to get women on the mountain. She began climbing in the late 60s, early 70s. Her name is Arlene Bloom. And when she started out climbing and tried to get on big mountains, she was told, no, women they can't be part of the team, but you can come and be the base cook camp. The base camp cook. Sorry, I said that backwards. You can cook for us. You can be there. But women at that time were perceived to be too emotional, too weak, and just not strong enough to carry their load. So she did a great thing. She did a couple things. What's noted in the book was about taking the first all-women's climb to Mount McKinley or Mount Denali in Alaska. But later in the 70s, I believe it was 1978, she arranged an all-women's climb of Annapurna, one of the 8,000-meter peaks. There's only 14 of them. It's the 10th highest mountain in the world, and she arranged an all-women's climb of it. And she succeeded in putting 2 women on top, and it happened to be the first 2 Americans. So she really paved the way for the rest of us. I never would have been the pioneer myself. It helps that people go before us. So now I have to just step back and ask, how many people in the room know the name of the first man to ever climb Everest? Shout it out if you know it, because Hillary. Yes, Hillary. Great. Now, show of hands. Does anyone know the name of the first woman to climb Mount Everest? No, I wish. No. It's, I've asked this over and over, and I've rarely gotten the answer, but it was a Japanese woman in 1975, and her name, and I probably botch it, is Junko Taibei. So, just to give credit there, because we like to give credit to those that go before us. So anyway, that is the big decision facing me, and so, back to my thoughts in my head is, am I too old? Am I too weak? Am I trained enough? Is what the world's saying true? Maybe I would be a hindrance to this team. So I was extremely worried about it. But in the same thought, I thought this is a great chance to do something really big. And this woman had really encouraged me. If you haven't read her book, she's got a new one out called Breaking Trail. that came out maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. But her original book was called this, A Woman's Place. And it's about the Annapurna climb. And now Laurel from Black Arrow gave me the entree to this. I was questioning whether I would do it, but I think I have a license to because I heard the laughters in the other room. The way she raised money for this climb was she sold $50,000 worth of T-shirts that said A Woman's Place is on top. That's my last woman card to play there. But it's exciting being a woman and knowing, it's out there, you can go do it now. So that's a little bit of that. All those things spinning in my head. The other questions are, can I get the time off work? Who will take care of the dogs? Who will water the plants? All the million questions that spin through your head. But the thing that made me decide to go was this quote right here of a good friend of mine. One of my climbing partners said this to me. He said, Tonya, you will never have enough time and or money to climb Mount Everest. Now, I put Mount Everest in red because you can substitute your Everest in there, and I bet it holds true 99% of the time in the room. Whatever is holding you back, we always blame it on time, money, or just, I'm too busy to do it. So it was really that thought that I said, okay, I'm doing it. So I bought my tickets for Kathmandu, and I knew I was flying to the other side of the world, and then this song kept going through my head.
I think I'm going to Kathmandu. That's really where I'm going to. If I ever get out of here.
You should see the two of us as we're putting these shows together, and she's picking out music. It gets a little crazy.
Hey, it's a Check It Out conference.
So Tonya, I think you struggled a little bit more than I did with the decision. We had a similar timeline to decide. I was approached in late January, early February, and asked if I'd be open to filming this expedition to create a documentary film. Again, we were leaving in March, so less than 2 months to decide and to plan and do it. And for me, the decision was quick. I absolutely, yes, I'm going, I want to do this. And for me, it was a little different. I'd spent, at this point when I was invited, I'd spent over a decade filming, climbing professionally, leading expeditions, filming expeditions, and so I was just, yes, I want to go. And it was not the first time I'd been on Mount Everest. 2 years previous to this, I had been on the south side of Everest, the other side of Everest. Our expedition was going to the north side in Tibet. I'd been on the south side in Nepal. And we did not summit. I was filming for Discovery Channel, filming a gentleman that had type 1 diabetes. We made it on a bluebird day, a perfect day, 300 meters below the summit. And you can see the point here that's not quite the true summit, but that's basically the view from high camp up to the top. And we made it so close to the top. And so for me, personally, professionally, this was exciting. Heck yes, I want to go back, and this is going to be a great opportunity to film, to do my profession, but also, yeah, selfishly to stand on top of Everest again. And while Tonya was worried about, will I have enough time, will I have enough money, am I prepared, what's going to happen here, I was really worried about this, and you've seen this slide before, I just showed it to you earlier. I was worried about the team. This was as diverse of a team as I had ever known in years of professional climbing. At this level, when people are going mountains of the magnitude that Everest is, most teams are well-oiled machines. They know each other very well. They've climbed for years together. The ins and outs of who they are and how they'll perform, it's a well-known quantity. They get along well. They are of like minds. And all I knew was, this is a motley crew. Not only are we going to make it to the top, but might we hurt each other along the way? Some of these guys had been told their entire lives to hate other people who were on this team. It was just such a different team that was a real concern to me. And the one statistic that was sticking in my mind this entire time as I'm flying to Kathmandu is, at the time, there was a 1 out of 10 chance, basically, for every 10 people that climb Mount Everest, one of those people died. And there are 10 of us on this team, and we don't like each other, supposedly. Wow, what was I getting myself into? This is what was going through my mind on the way to Nepal.
So Brad was thinking about the team, and what do you think I was thinking about? Nothing but me. I'm thinking, oh boy, I knew that same statistic, and I was afraid of it, and I'm like, what can I do to prepare so I'm not in that 10%? And by the way, the other half of that statistic is you have a 20% chance of success. So it was frightening on many, many fronts. But what I kicked into was preparation. And the first thing I did was I hired a great trainer. It's good to be from Colorado if you're going to go climb Mount Everest, because there's so much at your fingertips, so many people, so many mentors, so many people to reach out to. That's Chris Morris in an airport climbing a big sign of Eric Weinmeier, the blind gentleman, which he led up the mountain in 2001. And so Chris just happens to be a trainer, a weight trainer at my gym in Boulder. And I went up to him and I said, can I pay you? Can you train me? He goes, absolutely, Tonya. So every woman in the room will love this. I was giving this guy a lot of money per hour, and this is what his advice was. He said, I want you to eat as much Haagen-Dazs, cheesecake, and macaroni and cheese as you can, because that's the only chance you have of getting up this mountain is to gain weight. And I'm paying him money for this, right? So this is proof that I really did gain the weight. I was about 95 pounds when I was invited to go, and I got up to 112, I think that says. And the average man on the mountain he just melts away. He will lose 25 to 30 pounds. Now, women, we retain our weight a little more. But at that point, leaving in 2 months, he said, Tonya, really the best thing you can do is just put on some weight. Of course, we lifted weights. We went out and hiked. He had me hiking with a pack on my back and running a lot, getting my cardio up. And I wasn't like coming off the couch. I had been climbing for several years prior and been on other big peaks. But it was that, what can I really do to make a difference? And then I reached out to friends that had climbed and been on the mountain, and I said, to those that had made it and those that had failed, I said, what would you do differently? And I had lists. I mean, I had pages and pages of journals of what caused them to fail and what they could have done, and I started applying all of that. And then a great story, also from Colorado, is many of you may have skied and seen the Hottronic boot heaters. I had seen a woman speak at Outdoor Divas in Boulder. Her name is Ellen Miller, and she was the first woman to climb Mount Everest from both the north and the south side. And she said that she was also on a team that was kind of all male dominated, and she said she got scorned looks when she showed up with her little Hottronic heaters, but because they're quite expensive, and this is very techy. They're about $1,000 to buy these, and they hook on the back of your boot, but as a mountaineer, you have to rig an extension cord to bring the heaters, the little battery packs, up to your chest area to keep them warm so they don't freeze. And you just wear these, and they heat the floor bed of the boot. And they're wonderfully warm. And her comment back to all of these guys was, she said, hey, it's only $100 a toe. It's worth it, you know? So I'm like, that's a good insurance policy to take out. So I bought those, and we rigged that system. And then another fun thing I did, also from Colorado, this is just how much our state has to offer, is Colorado altitude training is here in town. And this is where Lance Armstrong, I know that might be a bad word now, but where Lance Armstrong, he used these altitude chambers. This is on my bed. He put it on in a room where he would ride his bike. And what it does, it simulates altitude. So I was sleeping at night in my bed, and I could take it from 16,000 feet up to 21,000 feet. And over time and slowly, over a 5-week period, and in theory what you're doing, you're creating more red blood cells so that you acclimatize better when you get there. I'll never know if it really made a difference, but psychologically it helped me because I felt I had an edge up the whole time. And yet I was a little claustrophobic. You can see my cat in the bed there. By the way, that is my cat named Reinhold. Reinhold was the first man to climb Everest, so I'll give kudos to the men, without oxygen. So that's kind of fun. So that's what I did to get ready.
And I will say, Tonya's preparation was more than warranted. You know, Everest is basically a 2 to 3 month commitment. And just getting there, throw some stats up, it's a long plane ride just to get to Nepal. And no matter whether you're climbing the north side or the south side, Tibet or Nepal. You begin the trip in Nepal, and it's just a long flight over. And then just getting to the mountain from Kathmandu. You're looking at a lot of logistics, a lot of complications. And then once you get to the mountain, again, it's 70 to 80 days average as far as time spent on the mountain. A lot of temperature variations, a lot of altitude variations. When you're nearing the top of Mount Everest, people appreciate about 2/3 less oxygen than what we're appreciating even here in Denver, which is a mile high. So a lot less oxygen. And with that comes a lot of potential health problems, let alone the temperatures, frostbite, all that. So there's a lot to consider, a lot of preparation to take place. And what I'm going to do now is just run you through what it looks like, just a typical climb up the north side, the north ridge of Mount Everest. This is our base camp. Base camp's about 18 miles away from the summit. The good thing, the nice thing about going to Everest on the north side is we literally get dropped off in a heated Land Cruiser at base camp. We drive the whole way. It's great. The bad thing is this is where we're going to be living for the next few weeks. And you can see it's snowy, it's cold, and it's a sudden shock to your body to leave Kathmandu about 4,000 feet above sea level and suddenly find yourself 4 days later, 5 days later, at 18,000 feet above sea level. Base camp on this side of Everest is higher than the high camp on the highest mountain in North America. So that just gives you some perspective of just how high even the base of this mountain is. So this is base camp. And most climbers spend a week or so here once they get there, and they just let their body start to adjust to the altitude. Our next step is to hike to what we call advanced base camp. That camp's going to be at about 21,500 feet above sea level, and it's a gorgeous hike, and it's literally just hiking. No climbing at this point. You can see the mountain, and you can see the summit the whole time. Gorgeous, gorgeous hike. These are ice pinnacles called penitentes. We're basically hiking along the side of a glacier. And then we reach advanced base camp, and you can see the summit way in the back. And at this point, the summit is still over a month away. It's over a month away not because it would take that long if we left advanced base camp and just started climbing. It wouldn't take that long. The bigger problem, the bigger complication, is we have to let our body adjust to those altitudes. And so even though we could get there in a number of days if we just went, we wouldn't make it due to all the health complications from the altitude. So again, we sit at advanced base camp for a while, a week or so. You get a lot of sleep, you eat a lot of food, and you catch up on just reading books. The joke is if you ever want to catch up on sleep, go mountaineering, because you just spend a lot of time being rather lazy. When we finally do start to climb, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. The north side is so pretty. And you lose a little perspective here, but you can see the saddle in this photo. That's actually 1,200 feet of vertical gain from where the people are. And so the scale is immense, and it's a wonderful place to be. This is a climb up to the North Col. This is some of the most technical climbing on our route. Gorgeous stuff. It's sexy climbing, and for a mountaineer, it really doesn't get any better. It's great. It's great. Another shot going up to the North Col. Steep stuff, snow, ice, maybe 60 degrees. We encounter some crevasses, which are basically cracks in the glacial system. And that's the view looking down. We use ladders to cross them, thank goodness. We have those. And then we arrive at the North Col. And the North Col is at 23,000 feet, 7,000 meters. This is higher than any mountain in the northern or southern hemisphere. So it's way up there. You're getting up there. It's a beautiful camp. This is known as Camp 1. And so I mentioned the adjustment periods for climbing Everest and letting your body adjust. When you're on a mountain like Everest, an 8,000 meter peak, you don't just leave base camp and gradually go up to the top over a course of period of time. We leave base camp, go up to the North Col, and then start that whole process over. We'll go all the way back down to base camp. The next rotation up will go a little bit higher than the North Col, go all the way back down to base camp. And most people have 1 or 2 rotations before that final summit push. And so it's this continual process of going up, coming all the way back down. The next time you go a little bit higher up, and you go all the way back down. So the North Pole is where we took our first rotation, and from there went all the way back down. The North Pole is great because it's very protected, it's safe, it's a good place to be. But as you leave the North Pole and head out onto the North Ridge proper, I'll show you just a quick video of this is a very common phenomenon. You're right in an area that catches a lot of wind, and this was on a perfectly clear day, but this is very typical wind.
Something right here. It took me and the team, not just me, all of us, about an hour and a half to get dressed to go out into that. We spent maybe 5 minutes in that and got back in the tent, spent another hour to get undressed and comfortable. That's
it takes a long time to do everything at these altitudes. And I'm not a runner. I despise running. But a friend of mine who's a decent marathoner, and a mountaineer, he described this really well. And this is Camp 2, which is at 25,500 feet. And he said, you know, living at these altitudes, it's like running a marathon while breathing through a straw. And there's just so little oxygen that the most simple of tasks become very labored, become very complicated. Just putting your boots on takes a long time. And Tonya speaks to that on how long it took us to do that. Again, Camp 2, working our way up the North Ridge. And I love Camp 2, and I love this photo because it gives you a perspective of how steep the north side of the mountain is. This is looking back, and you can see the tents, the little dots. That's the North Pole. That's that Camp 1. And that is almost 3,000 feet lower than where we shot this photo. And then the next photo you can see, again, they're a little hard to see, but you can see these little colored dots up here. That's our advanced base camp. That's at 21,000 feet. And so you can look almost straight down for a vertical mile and see where you were. And to me, it just offers a great perspective of how steep and how challenging this climb is on this side of the mountain. Just a pretty shot. That's Choyu. The sun is setting over Choyu, which is the 7th highest mountain in the world. So you're really among the giant mountains here. The collection of the highest mountains in the world all based in Nepal, India, Pakistan. So we're really among the giants here. This is what it looks like at this point, leaving Camp 2 to move up to Camp 3. Camp 3 is our high camp. At this point, we plug in to supplemental oxygen. That's what the mask is. People wear the big goggles, not only to protect from the sun, the UV, but also the wind and the blowing snow. We're wearing big, huge down suits. We joke that we're the Michelin man because they are. It's just a one-piece down suit. They're fantastic. It's like living in a sleeping bag with arms. So life here gets just that much more complicated because while you're in this suit, and this is what it looks like from the outside looking in, this is often what it feels like from the inside looking out. Because you're now plugged into oxygen, that creates humidity. Humidity fogs your goggles. Not to mention, because you now have this down suit on, you can't see your feet. And I'll go back to just how steep that route is. You can't see your feet, but you have to climb. And so everything becomes more labored, more complicated, more severe in consequences due to poor decisions or bad weather. So again, this is often how it feels. Just a very standard photo of what the terrain looks like moving up to high camp. You can see the summit in the back. The summit is still several days away. It looks close, but again, it's that grand scale. You lose perspective of just how far things are away from you, how big things are compared to you. Typical terrain, snow, a little rock, a little ice. This photo was taken at just over 26,000 feet. 26,000 feet is known as the barrier of the death zone. And the death zone, everything above 26,000 feet, is a physiological change for humans. It's where our body is not only no longer adapting to the altitude, we're literally starting to shut down. There's so little oxygen in the air that our organs can't survive. And so we start taking oxygen from our body, from our muscles, from our organs, and you really can't live up at these altitudes for more than just a matter of days. Even with supplementary oxygen, it does not help. Supplementary oxygen does a few things. One, it helps you keep warm. It helps your blood circulate a little bit better, and it keeps you that much warmer. But it does not reduce your effective altitude by just a few thousand feet. So it's not a huge change. You're still experiencing these altitudes. This is where most accidents happen, above the death zone. This is where most fatalities occur. This is where most frostbite occurs. And it's where most of the other medical issues occur. Pulmonary edema, where your lungs fill with fluid and you drown. Cerebral edema, where your brain fills with fluid and you die. And so this is what we're experiencing. We're seeing these things. So I'm going to show a quick video here. If you're sensitive, this is a body we came across. This is a reality, unfortunately, of climbing mountains like Everest. And this guy, you know, he's on the mountain forever. He's never going to leave. And through all this, we end up at high camp, 27,500 feet. Where these tents are, there are only 4 mountains in the world that are higher than this point. And we're on one of them, and we can see 2 of them. So we're in a cool place when we reach this point. It's a challenging place, but it's really cool, and it's like that photo up to the North Pole. If you're a mountaineer, this is awesome. You feel it, you know you're there. And so this is what we were going to be going through as a team, and I'll go back to who we were as a team, you know. How are we going to do going through all this? And I don't know, what were you thinking?
Well, about that time, I started kicking it into thoughts of the team too, because up to this point, it was just all about me. It was more, how am I going to be prepared? How am I going to get ready? But by the time we were there and on the mountain and starting to climb, it's like my old past kicked in. You always go back to your comfort zone. And I had come out of corporate America, where I actually taught training and development and all of the courses that go along with that. And one of the things we always taught, and I think many of you in this room have seen it, and if you haven't, you will see it at some point in your career, but it's the 5 stages of a team, and it's been described many different ways. So I'm going to take a little liberty and describe it in my own terms here, but it's basically the phases of going through norming, storming, performing, and then, or norming, storming, forming, and then performing, and then high performing. And people have played with this many different ways. You get mourning, you get adjourning at the end. But in general, what this describes is that these are the steps a team goes through, and a team can't skip these steps. And the most important thing I want to highlight up here is the storming step. Because in order to be effective, teams are going to hit that place where they butt heads and they have conflict, but the teams that come out on the other side of that are the teams that can win. And for me on this, this is just like, now, I can't comprehend this. How are we going to do this on a mountain? What if we get into conflict? Who's going to have my back? Who's going to save me if I fall down? I'm back to me again a little bit, but I had asked a good friend and a mentor what it was like on the mountain. He said, Tonya, you're an island. So I show up over there and I'm like, we just can't be a team. We don't have the luxury of being a team. We're strangers. We've come together from these countries, and I don't know anybody, and I am the only woman, and that started freaking me out a little bit. I didn't want to be the woman. I wanted to be strong on my own. I didn't want the guys to have to take care of me. And yet I was scared, you know, it was a big deal. And I watched the phases from my perspective of just the norming part is the niceties, you know, we're all here together, we're kind of figuring each other out. And then, you know, I just feared what's going to happen when it all goes down and we hit that conflict phase. And I think that's where you're going to share more about your view.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I need to point out that I'm a climber. I've never had a 9-to-5 job in my life, and Tonya's talking about norming, storming, forming, right over my head. Right over my head. But as a filmmaker, I did have a unique opportunity to see both what was happening with our team behind the scenes and as a group out in the open for everyone to see. And so what I did see, it really does fall into these things. This is a photo of our team. This is our first meeting in Kathmandu. And again, only a few of us had ever met. But if you look at this table, you don't see a lot of smiles on people's faces. Like, this should be a fun adventure, and there's just a lot of tension. Not only had we never met, obviously there were these differences that we both discussed. And so, yes, there was definitely the norming phase. There were a lot of niceties, a lot of great conversations, mainly just cursory conversations, very simple, very subtle, very kind to each other. We helped in the preparation of leaving Kathmandu and getting things ready. Everyone was really nice to each other, but as this photo attests, you could literally cut the tension in the air with a butter knife. I mean, it was just thick. You could feel it. It was a very visceral, tangible thing. And so I have to say, not soon after leaving Kathmandu and heading to base camp, definite storming, a lot of fighting, a lot of confrontations, and those didn't end until well into the expedition. And as a mountain guide and as a filmmaker, it was great. It was great drama. You know, it was good stuff. but as someone who also leads expeditions, I was concerned because every decision in a place like Everest has very severe consequences if they're poor decisions or if they're just not based on team well-being and based on completely selfish acts. And so it was worrying to me. It was worrying to everyone on the team. And again, I'll go back to being the filmmaker. I got to see this in the behind-the-scenes interviews I was doing. We had the expedition leader, Jamie McGinnis, who is a phenomenal guy. But he would tell me how he thinks the team is going to break. He thinks several of the team members may not make it, and I mean may not make it in the final sense of that. And then he would publicly criticize people, pull them out at dinner and just rip them apart. We had Ali, who's the Palestinian. We had Dudu and Micha, and Dudu is short for David in Israel. And these guys, although they on the surface often got along, when I would interview just the three of them, boy, they would really go at it. And these were very serious. I mean, these guys weren't just there to climb the mountain. They were there, and I know to many people outside of these countries, it's an academic issue, or largely academic issue of their dislike for one another and their governmental dislike for each other in their countries. To them, it was very real. It's very real. They've grown up with it. They're living it every day. And at a certain point, Ali found out that Dudu had served in the special forces for the Israeli army and had engaged actively in fights against Palestinians. And let me tell you, that is not fun to be involved in that argument on an icy slope on a mountain like Everest. It's alarming. We had these types of things going on all the time, let alone the disparity of experience, the wide array of experience, mountaineering experience, where one person had a certain way of doing things that they knew was the only right way to do something. Someone else on our team had a completely different way of doing things, which by all accounts, they both were fine, but because they had their strong opinions and they were so different from one another, constant arguments on what was the right way to do something, what was the right way to jump this hurdle that presented itself on the mountain. So we had some very serious issues going on. And then I'll flip to this slide. I chose this slide because Tonya's goofing around practicing with the oxygen system, and I'm laughing. And I'll go back to that photo of the team and how everyone came from all different places. And we had one woman on the team, one woman that no one had met. And I'm thinking, to your point, mountaineering, especially in these big Himalayan mountains, it's almost a solely male-dominated arena. Very few women go on these expeditions. None of us knew Tonya. And I'm thinking the whole time, just think of all the problems that can happen. You've got a bunch of A-type males, super, super goal-oriented, who don't necessarily get along. Tell me that isn't a recipe for testosterone disaster. I mean, this is just ripe for a problem. And then you throw a female in the mix. What are these guys going to do? Are they going to be jostling to prove who the alpha male is? Are they going to be wanting just to look attractive to you, or, throw their peacock feathers up, and we're talking guys here on a mountain. And I'm thinking, oh, this is probably not going to go well. And I show this slide, and I'll move from the storming to the forming, because I really credit having a female on our team for the success of our expedition. Too many times in the mountains, people try to push too hard. They go too fast, too high, too quickly. They just push it. They're trying to prove to the rest of the team that they're tough. Again, sounds like a bunch of guys. Tonya really, something about having Tonya on the team changed the dynamic of all of the males. Everyone on the team became polite, cordial. We joked around in ways that I'd never seen on big expeditions. And I put that in your lap because having a woman there calmed everybody down. It could have had tremendous consequences if everyone had decided to be macho. And it really had the opposite effect. Everyone calmed down, everyone worked together, and after we sorted out the arguments, and after we'd lived together for so long and we're getting to know each other so well, having that female influence was incredibly beneficial to us. And Tonya brings up a good point from time to time. I think at certain points in the expedition, guys loved having Tonya. Tonya was a little bit slower than some of the guys. Not all the guys, just some of the guys. But some of these guys who would push it and go fast, from time to time would use Tonya. I'm just going to take care of Tonya today. I'm going to make sure she's okay and go a little slower. And so all these things, really, it ended up working so well, and we got along so much better by having that female influence, and by getting along better, and by not pushing too hard. By the time we got to high camp, we were in so much better of a place, so much better of a position to be successful. And so having that female dynamic was an incredible experience for me, but it was incredible to see how our diversity throughout all of this, whether you're female, male, whether you're Israeli, Palestinian, it came down to diversity and the differences between us. And so by the time we were climbing high, going for the summit, it was just fantastic. We were that well-oiled machine. And we were finding that instead of our differences getting in the way, we were utilizing our differences. We had more tools in our toolbox. Those climbing philosophies that had created arguments, this is the way to do something, not that, that actually provided flexibility, agility. And when problems would arise, we had a multitude of ways and a multitude of experience to surmount those issues. And having the woman was just one example. But it was a tremendous, tremendous experience to see how what had caused arguments, what had caused worry and angst, were our differences, our diversity. And the other side of the coin was, by the time we were moving up to high camp, it was the diversity among us that was actually not just helping us, it was saving us and making sure we were going to be safe and capable.
So now we're a well-oiled machine. We're a high-performing machine going for the top. And I'm just going to start back where Brad left off at this high camp and kind of take it from there and tell you what our summit bid was like. And we're nearing the end of our show here. But this is the camp that you arrive to at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And the goal is to get there, get some food and water in you, and get to sleep by 6 p.m. because you're going to get up at 10 p.m. to start walking at 11. That was my agenda. The guys got to get up at 11 to start walking at 12, but I was going to leave an hour sooner because I was about an hour slower. And it's a big night because you've got the anxiety going on and you're not hungry because you are in the death zone, as Brad mentioned, and your body's not functioning. And there's no hunger. You hardly want to drink. You certainly can't sleep. But you know you need to. You try to relax. We have 3 people in a tent. And yeah, by this point, I'd kind of gravitated to Brad because he was the other American and I could understand everything he was saying. I was kind of following him and hanging out with him because he'd been there before. And out of all the people on the team, I thought, I'm going to follow him and pay attention to him because he's gotten this close to the top, like he said before, and turned around. So I was kind of hanging out with him a little bit there.
No, I do want to say that the fact that she had any sense of respect for me at this point is a pure example of altitude illness, but that is.
Is that lack of oxygen? But so we got there, we ate, and we went to sleep. And this is what we're going to do in the dark. Now, we took this photo off of the website because we couldn't have captured it in the nighttime, but this is the picture of what we're climbing in the dark. And it's a little hard to see here, but when you climb from the north side, you're climbing a ridge. It's the ridge versus the south side, which is more snowy slopes that you've seen the pictures of and read more about. So once you gain the ridge, there's 3 technical areas of rock climbing. And as Brad mentioned, you're wearing this suit. The suit is, you've got the foggy goggles, but the suit's also sticking out here, the hood of it. You can't really see your feet. You've got the crampons on your feet, and you're going to scale some rocks. And they're not super high, maybe from here up there to James, and maybe a little taller on a few of the sections, maybe to the top of the balcony. And it's not super hard rock climbing, but it's hard enough just because you've got these big gloves on too, the outdoor research mittens that are real thick and fluffy. And so it adds a dynamic to it that's a little difficult. But you're once on the ridge, then you're going to walk along the ridge, and this is what that looks like right here. We got lucky this year because there's a lot of snow on it. This is a sheer drop-off to the right of about 8,000 feet. And if the snow's not there, those rocks are shale-like, like tile, and they can be very wet and slippery. But you can see where the rope is running there. We actually had good purchase, and we had those crampons on so we could walk. Again, it's dark, so you don't see the drop-off to the right. And you're moving very slow, and you have your headlamp on, so you're not even seeing that far out. I could see lightning in the distance. I have a fun story to share. I was always annoyed that night leaving because I kept having this bright light, and I thought this climber was in front of me, you know, our headlamps, and I thought this person was shining it in my face, constantly looking back. And then at one point I realized it was the moon. And things, you're just hypersensitive, but it was that shining in my face the whole time. So you're super sensitive. I tell people everything hurt. My neck hurt from sleeping, looking down, from carrying weight. The oxygen tanks weigh 12 pounds each when they're full, so that's 24 pounds on your back. And you're just, I even said my hair hurt. You know, you're just in this phase of discomfort. It's a lot of suffering, but you know, if you can just get through this day, you've done it. And here's a view on the ridge on the other side looking back as we came down. But that's the Kangchung face. So what you saw before was the north face, and then the Kangchung face is on the other side, and that's about a 10,000 drop. And I think only 1 or 2 people have climbed that, and someone from Colorado, Ed Webster, right? So it's really beautiful, but we don't have the sun yet, and we're kind of moving through this in the night, but you start to see the light coming around, what would you say, 4?
Yeah, maybe
4-ish?
4 or 5 in the morning, it starts to get light.
And what's interesting, once it is light and it's a complete light day, you still see the stars in the sky. As hard as that is to believe, but I guess it's what the astronauts see when they go to the moon because it's so dark that they're actually visible. Okay, and this is one of those technical steps up close. You can kind of see here that our pointer doesn't work on here, but at the top there's some climbers, so that'll give you a little bit of the sense of the scale and the scope. But this is some of the rock that we have to get up, and just a little bit of what that looks like. Here's another view of it from above looking down. Now, there are fixed line. The Sherpas are the unsung heroes here, the ones that go before us in the bad weather and the colder days and put the lines up and take care of them. But you can also see how they can be a little bit of a cluster and a problem, too. And you want to check them always and make sure they're safe. But this is from someone standing on the top looking back down, and you get a sense of how sheer that drop-off is on that north face. And that's quite intimidating. And then this is one of the views. It's really cool to say that I'm climbing a mountain, and if this is as far as I could go, I'm already as high as 2 of the other 8,000-meter peaks. I'm looking out at Makalu in the foreground, the big dome-shaped mountain, and in the very background is Kechenchunga. And Makalu's number
5.
5, and Kechenchunga's number
3.
3. He's the guide. He remembers these things. I'm not good with numbers. That's why I'm not a techie. I can't keep the numbers straight. So that's the beautiful view. And this is that summit, that fall summit that if anyone saw the Discovery Channel, Beyond Everest, that whole show, when you're here, now you're about still a few hours from the top, but this is where a lot of people turned around that year. But it's just a beautiful slope, and you can kind of, at this point, you know you're going to make it. And I remember just thinking, boy, I'm going to get there. This is actually going to happen. And here is one more view. And this was as we were going down, just looking back above the clouds and how beautiful and serene it really is. So now we're going to show you some video of us reaching the top. And it's kind of fun. You'll see one of the Sherpas holding up the Panasonic sign, and he'll say, it's a little hard to hear, so I'm telling you, he'll say he loves Panasonic, and it comes out cute, I love Panasonic, and then he says, I love peace, but I just want you to know what he's really saying, and you'll just get a real sense of what it's like and see the view from the top of the world. This is the fun part to share with you.
I love. Hey, it's okay. Hey, Panasonic. I love Panasonic. What do you think?
I can't believe I did it. I don't know what to say. Okay, so real quick here, because we're on a bit of a time crunch, I'm just going to flip through these last few slides. That's the actual picture of the summit. It's about the size of this stage, and that's not dirt or trash that you see up there, but that's prayer flags. And real quick, this is Miha on top, and I have to share this one song, but I'll cut it short, because this song and his photo sum up the entire trip. Just catch the words here. And then he laughed at himself while the tears rolled down. That's the rest of that song, but I'll cut it short. And then this is Brad and I on top, and we get to announce and say that this is our first date photo. It's kind of fun, but what you really need to know is I had to Photoshop out the 2 inches of snot hanging out my nose. I also like to point out that I didn't need oxygen, and he did, but that's not the case. And I have a song for him, real quick. And you've all heard this, do it. I do give him credit for helping me. I'll let that end it, and I'll let him summarize.
And I'll just sum up real fast. A lot of things happened on this trip, and as we heard the speaker earlier today, the morning keynote, she talked about passion, determination, persistence. the overriding factor of how we survived such a diverse team, how we survived the obstacles on Everest, really go back to those 3 principles. And I loved hearing your talk today. And I thought, actually one of my slides is about passion, but we're going to cut it here. Passion, without passion, you wouldn't have that determination, you wouldn't have that persistence. And so it was this fantastic experience that I think goes into everyone's life, no matter what it is they do. We just happen to climb mountains, but those 3 principles were so strong for us and enabled us to do incredible things. And we joked, you know, like, why are we talking about Mount Everest at a technology seminar? And if you think about it, none of this would have happened without technology. Panasonic was the key sponsor. Without their money, none of this would have happened. With the incredible technology of cameras, of computers, of satellites, we were editing video at base camp and sending it back to the United States via satellite. We were doing such incredible things, all based on technology. The oxygen systems, the clothing we wear, all based on engineers, technologies, design, innovation. And I think about, this was 2006, we filmed standard definition. It's since changed just a few years later to high definition. Another couple years, it's going to be 4K. I don't know what's going to be beyond that in just my world of technology. And so I want to thank you guys, really.
Thank you.
Without technology, none of this would be possible, and we wouldn't be able to share the story with you either. So thanks so much.
Thank you. How's that? Thanks. Thanks.